Today I'm joined by Buyi Mafoko, co-founder and MD of Matt Black, a digital experiential agency. She's also host of African Luxury Podcast, a speaker, luxury brand consultant, a marketing communications and media professional, and founder of Noble Luxury Consulting. Welcome.
Wow. Hello. On the other side. I'm on the other side
Yes,
this
yes.
time.
It's always nice to
Hi, Kojo.
it's always nice to do that flip. Like I'm
Yeah.
finding I'm doing it a bit more. Um, and it's always just interesting switching hats.
We just switched hats 2 months ago. And probably by the time this drops, your episode will be dropping actually. So
It'll be nice. Like
Yeah.
we'll do a little family, a little collective. Hey
Correct.
world.
Yeah, it's like a bundle pack.
Yeah.
How are things?
All good. All good. Where'd you grow up?
Where didn't I grow up? So interesting, very interesting childhood. Nomadic in the most fun sense. I grew up, I always contextualize it like this. I went to 8 schools in 12 years. I had a grandfather who was a rep, SAB initially. He was a sales rep for Ichuba. If you if you know, you know. And then proceeded to go on to BAT as a rep for the cigarettes. So that meant our base was always KZN, but that meant very different parts of the region. Inland, coastal, back to inland, back to coastal. And then I had my later high schooling years, completed them more inland, but also had some time in Mpumalanga, somewhere in between there. So the mining towns.
So how do you find in changing spaces? How do you find that thread, that balance? Because I can imagine like you're going to a new space, it's new people, it's new environment, it's new school, and kids are not always the kindest of people. And I can imagine trying to find your center so that you can navigate those different spaces.
Yeah.
Was a task.
It was a task, but I think it's shaped the woman I've become. It shaped my ability to be autonomous, irrespective of the setting. I think what is important is that I was well loved and I was secured. I had grandparents who adored me, and a mother who was very diligent. So my mother had me younger, but she was very diligent in being present as time allowed those days. I was very much affirmed. So I guess my sense of self was within me, and it was harnessed by the people that were the adults that were raising me. And so geography had no, I think I wasn't married to geography because I never lost that sense because the people that were core to my life were with me wherever I went. Maybe if it was a case of my mom left me to go work in a different town or my grandparents moved and left me behind, that probably would have maybe come up. The abandonment or the sense of place would have not been there. But I had a very strong sense of place because my grandparents were consistent throughout my life.
The home was the people,
not the place.
And what they created, regardless of where it was.
Correct.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I think I was always firstly, probably very exposed early on. I think my grandmother in particular, who was a homemaker all her life and actually became an entrepreneur later in her life. So at the point where my grandfather retires, she becomes an entrepreneur. Old girl went and got her driver's license in her 60s, bought her first car, post my grandfather's passing. So I think a strong sense of women, matriarchs, helped. And entrepreneurship probably was always something that was there because even though my grandmother was a housewife, she always sold something. I maybe never had a clear definition of what that was, but I was always very enterprising. I was the girl with the moon bag and stock sweets selling something. My mother also very dynamic. She went as far as standard 7 because she had kids young. But yeah, I think worked, pioneered, broke into spaces, broke into corporate. She's an operator, so she's an operations person. Dynamic, moves through spaces very differently. And I guess that gives me my ability to move just confidently through spaces. And the main thing that flipped it all for me was education. I think education then gave me an avenue to pretty much give me a sense that I could be anything that I wanted, and I have been. I mean, everything I've perceived or dreamed, I've managed to gain a grasp on. Studied something, studied at Wits. I mean, obviously going through different schools as well gives you exposure. So, you're in Newcastle, in a worse school, and you praat Afrikaans, and you move from that into deep rural KZN and ukhuluma isiZulu. So it just gave me this ability to be dynamic and to have these tentacles that are so broad that anywhere in the world, I'm able to start up. So I am never intimidated by starting again as many times as it takes. So I can be whatever I want. I could meet you and I'm a monk. I do believe that we have the gift of being able to be everything we want. I think through God and through really leaning into being spiritual beings more than human beings, because those are the ones that tie us to titles, that tie us to people, that tie us to places. But yeah, I'm able to transcend all the time.
I think it's a conversation I've had with quite a few people, a couple of my guests. This being able to kind of navigate and find your, and find your comfort and find your place within multiple spaces. And the conversation's always has always been tied to identity and things like that for me, particularly coming from one place to South Africa. And what people don't, I think the part from a South African perspective that often people miss out on is the diversity within, for example, Black people. There's always this, and you and I have both worked in the media, where the biggest challenge for me personally was realizing that there was no nuance when we're looking, when we're looking at Black.
Yeah.
And I can imagine Mpumalanga to, because I've been exposed to kind of people from the different spaces and have never quite belonged in any particular place. I can imagine what it gave you to be able to navigate from, say Durban to rural KZN to Mpumalanga to Joburg to etc. And we don't realize at the time that it gives us such an amazing ability to literally navigate different spaces and find a comfort in it, but also see people and recognize the difference and the similarity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gift, I guess, because the duality, as you're saying, of being able to accept what the new space offers you, but know that you're coming into the new space with enough because your only reference point is where you come from. I guess is what you're gifted in being able, because Joburg is a very different, people who come to Joburg from KZN for the first time are like, whoa. But I never felt intimidated moving from rural KZN, which is actually where I moved from, to Joburg and back. I even lived in Swaziland at some point. But the beauty of it, I guess, is a great sense of self. Because you are the only consistent party in all those settings. And perhaps I just have a strong grasp on that, on myself.
So you did a Bachelor of Arts in Human Movement and Psychology.
Oh, child, you look me up.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, you talk about moving multiple schools. What is human movement? I understand the psychology part of it, but what
Yeah.
is human movement?
So, a little bit of a background to that, how I landed in that degree. Finished matric young at that point. I think I was 17, had just turned 17. No real sense of what I want to do. I think it's an unfair expectation to expect an 18, 17, or not even 19-year-old to make a decision for the rest of their lives. And conversation for another day about how education should consider framing that or reframing that. But I was sporty in school. So I was a tomboy, grew up with a brother, an older brother who was the coolest guy. Hip hop exposed me, Tribe Called Quest, Talib Kweli. Obviously, hip hop ushers you into the basketball scene. And growing up in the city in Durban, we would walk to the beach to play basketball. And in the inner city, there's recreational spaces. So there was the local YMCA where, just like my brother who was 5 years older than me, I was sagging my pants and wearing jockeys showing. So the tomboy phase of me, I think, is what I guess pervaded the sportiness in me. My mom actually was an athlete as well herself, short and fast. My brother then became an athlete as well, 100-meter, 200-meter relay, and a few other
Those are
sporting
my
codes.
races.
I love the relay. And I think he did high jump and long jump as well. I did the same, but obviously didn't grow very much beyond 157. So at some point I stopped doing high jump and long jump, but still had the sprints, 100-meter, 200-meter, and the relays. So, at the end of my matric, or as we're starting to make decisions, my mom is like, well, you got to make a decision because you have to study something. And the thing that was a buzz those days was au pairing, going overseas to au pair, because I guess it lent you an opportunity to travel and get international exposure. I toyed with that, and my mom was like, but you're going to need something as a background or as a second option. And so I just sort of applied to WITS because my best friend's older sister had gone to WITS and had studied political sciences and something else, international relations, I think. And WITS is the only university that I applied to. And in terms of degrees, I was just like, let me look for something sporty because at the very least, let me study something I like. And there was a department called the Physical Education Department, which is situated at the education campus at WITS. Applied, found my way through it, and landed up in this course called Human Movement Studies and Sciences. Had no idea what it was, but did it through the Bachelor of Arts route, and so the psychology would be the second major. The human movement aspect of it, to my surprise, was very medical. So it's a sports science degree, essentially. So I am now at Wits Medical School in the anatomy department, dealing with cadavers. I am there with kinesiology professors. I'm just like, where am I? I think I asked myself for the 3 years that I was doing the degree. And I just kind of live this dual life between main campus and education campus as well as med school. But essentially, it's a sports science degree. That's what it is. So it falls within the biokinetics world, sports science, sports psychology, sports physiology world.
Which kind of makes sense, like the physical and then the mental.
Correct.
And navigating that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a 100-meter, I specialized in 100 meters,
Nice.
but I did 100 and 200 and then 4x100 relay. And I was actually in Durban.
Were you a starter or a finisher in the relay? It matters.
It matters, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So when I was in high school, I was a finisher because that's when you come down the whole school on sports day. So the fastest, the star of the team does that leg because everybody's going to cheer you on. I spent a year in Germany after school and joined a club there. And I was a starter. because I had the best start.
Ah,
And so you were assigned the leg according to your ability to run the leg, as opposed to the last one is the glory. So
Yeah.
you're going to be the faster, you run the last one. And starting is highly technical because of where you put your blocks, because you're starting on a curve. You can't, you can't point the blocks out because, as you know, if you've sprinted, like you take your time to come up into stride. Now, if you're doing that on a curve, it becomes very difficult. So you actually plant your blocks to the side and you point straight at the apex.
Very technical.
So, yeah. So
my entire degree, that, because I would then be met with the injuries that come from sprinters and all sorts of athletes.
And so what ended my running career was an injury when I was at varsity in Durban.
Where were you at varsity?
Then University of Natal, Durban. Now part of UKZN.
Which campus?
Howard College. In Durban. So, but this was early 90s.
Good times.
Yeah, interesting times. Just randomly, like a friend of mine, his daughter's just gone to UCT, and he said her first day, she just finished matric last year, her first day that she was supposed to go to lectures, and there was kind of student protests.
Yeah.
And I was like, that reminds me of my first month in Durban, in varsity, because there was a class boycott.
It's crazy how we haven't moved much from that, because the university space is a very political space because of the landscape of education in this country, isn't it? Or the disparities therein.
I mean, I guess we could argue that it's tragic that we're still having it now.
Yeah.
Because for me, this was 1992. This is even before the elections. So you kind of understand it has a particular context.
Yeah.
And the irony of the university was that we were such a small portion of the full student population that university could go ahead with stuff without us making any real type of impact. Like if if 10% of you are missing lectures, that number or more than that number miss lectures every day when you're in varsity
anyway. Because of the social part.
And so
you just bunk, according to them, you just bunk lectures.
So res was black. And if we're not going to lectures, it's not really making that much of a difference.
That's on you.
So that was my first introduction to South Africa and South African politics.
So you had come straight from Germany into university.
So I grew up in Lesotho.
Right.
I went to Germany after high school, spent a year there, came back,
and went to
worked in Lesotho with my father for about 7-8 months, and then went to Durban. And I hadn't spent a lot of time in South Africa. My father was banned. My father was only unbanned.
Politically banned?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also associations and history, but he couldn't cross. So he could only start, I think, he only started really kind of regularly, officially crossing, I think after 91. So because of that, I wasn't really exposed. I understood the politics from an intellectual perspective. Because, I had family who were in exile, or, family as in people that people that became family, my friends, my father's friends. My father was also involved in more from, he was an academic. So more from academic perspective and lecturing. He lectured political science, African studies, and studied in Europe. So there was that in the 60s.
I would have loved those conversations.
Yeah, it made for interesting conversations. I mean, like a lot of who I am and a lot of how I think and a lot of my inclinations and tendencies were molded by my father. And then he went into business. So even what I studied and the work that I've done and my early training was from him.
Yeah.
The degrees was just to kind of put
A frame.
create a bit more of a formal foundation.
Yeah.
So I only have, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, I only have an undergrad. Like, I did 3 years of a BCom. I thought of honors, I thought of masters, and over the years, as these things became popular, and my father always used to say, like, if you're gonna go study, you must know why.
Exactly. Oh, I was just asked that question.
And I could never answer the why. So why did you go study? Because you've done quite a bit.
Yeah, I was just asked that question. I sat in on my PhD interview, and it was lovely to still have my answer be my answer, to still have my why be my why. I think for me, education is really just an organized. It has managed at least to organize my life in gathering knowledge, multifaceted knowledge. I I think it is important, as you say, to have a formal foundation that is able to structure how we gather knowledge. I think in the times that we're living in, obviously, I mentioned earlier that the conversation of education is under question around in the time of so many emerging technologies. Are 3-year degrees still relevant when people are learning micro courses daily, where people are teaching themselves skills online daily? But for me, at least in the traditional sense, it's just managed to open my eyes, or at least every time I go back and study, it manages to open my eyes into a new dimension. It's less about the accolade. Even last week when I had my interview with two PhD professors, it was around why do you think you can contribute anything new? Why do you think the industry needs to hear from you? Why do you think the whys? But just to still very much have a clear conviction that I I have a very clear perception of what my assignment is in this life. And I think education gives me the ability to organize those thoughts and to offer them back to the world. I I am a voice in African luxury that contributes new thinking, new knowledge, but that is not devoid of gathering the knowledge and the thoughts of other people. So I'm collaborating with people all the time. Academically, it could be with peers in the classroom or professors or lecturers in the classroom. In industry, it's with colleagues like yourself. But needless to say, irrespective of the setting, one is constantly in conversation, because I probably, doctors sit and still research stuff every day because they don't have all the knowledge. There's just, and at the rate at which knowledge is now being able to be produced and published, influencers, look at what's happening on TikTok. There's new information every day. And I think I thrive better with information because I also don't want to speak like an empty vessel. I'm quite considered person. I spend a lot of time in my head about things, and it's being able to take those things that are in my head and put them out. It could be through the podcast, it could be through what I write, just to put them out as succinct thoughts that are
I find that
well
such
informed.
an outdated, or that question makes me uncomfortable. That what do you think that you're going to add to the world that's new? Because it feels like it makes the assumption that the only value that you have
Is what
and the purpose of life is what you kind of put out there, and whether other people externally go, oh yeah, that's valuable.
the validation.
Whereas I've got to the point in my life where it's just like, I'm constantly evolving as a human being, and sometimes it's just being interested in stuff.
Facts.
And it's kind of like, if you want to go and study that and do that because it's giving you new language and new perspectives and a new lens, that should be answer enough.
It should be enough, yeah. I think because with education, I've also managed then to travel. It's like books, right? It's like the importance of books, where you're able to imagine the setting when Chinua Achebe wrote When Things Fall Apart. You can imagine Paulo Coelho as he was navigating himself through the alchemy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just being able to, and people do it through different mediums. People do it through film, people do it through music. It's just an ability to be able to constantly venture into the world. And I think as a parent, and you and I spoke about parenting, it's also particularly important that, I mean, sometimes I'm posed questions where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. You know, my son will ask me, I don't know, the 10-year-old now is at a point where he's asking very deep and philosophical questions. And I'm just saying, I don't know. Should we? There's an assignment for both of us. Let's research it. Let's YouTube it. Let's chat GPT it. So, but I just, perhaps I'm more intrigued by the journey of discovery more than I am by anything else when it comes to education.
What was your first job?
You know, I have worked, it feels like I've worked all my life. But my first actual job was in retail. I've always loved money. That one thing is true.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah, I think, and maybe let me qualify that. I've always loved money as a means to freedom. Being raised by a single parent, it was important for me to unburden my mom of the responsibility as soon as I could. So I also had always had a palate for finer things, which meant that I couldn't reasonably expect my mom, who's a single parent, to buy me that thing in December, because I know in Jan, school fees is coming, uniform is needed, and stationery. So what I did do is, as soon as I could, I worked. I worked in retail. I worked in Foschini on West Street. Is it West Street or Smith Street in Durban? I worked at Game. This was obviously holiday work. I worked, I've always taken myself very seriously, also. So I always postured myself against the people that were there working at this as their careers. But it taught me a lot, because I had a seriousness to it. It wasn't just, oh, holiday work, I'll get my temp hours and I'll get my casual money and leave. So I always then had consistency in my jobs. Even when I was in Joburg, I still, during holidays when I visited my grandparents, worked at the Foschini. I liked that there was clothes. I liked that there was perfume. I wasn't into makeup back then. But worked the retail circuit. When I was at Wits, I worked at Strategist in Rosebank, and we're in Rosebank, and then I worked the fragrance counters at Strategist, and I moved on to Sandton, because Sandton was the pinnacle of Strategist.
Yeah, that was the store at some stage.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Harrods of our lifetime. Worked at Strategist, the Clarence counter. So then I moved over to skincare and makeup. And then the retail was never waited. But also because I guess I was exposed to retail so early on. But that taught me customer service, that taught me communication, that taught me time management, that taught me having money in excess, because those December hours that you're working, where Sandton closes at 10, you're getting lots of money actually. And just what I do with the money. So it was just being able to say to my mom, don't worry about the uniform, don't worry about the cosmetics. I'm here, I'm fine. You know, I managed to negotiate a deal with my res officer to say, because we were meant to move out during the major holidays, like the June and the December. And I say to him, I'll stay here rent free, but I'll work and I'll stay out of your hair. You don't have to give me meals. All I need is, I'll put everything in storage. All I need is my linen and my suitcase. And Lewis, I still see him actually. He was like, I may lose my job, but sure. and that's how I managed to. So I'd work from when schools close. I mean, you finish your exams end of November. I'd work for a good month before I had to go home before Christmas. And I'd be able to come home with money, actually.
And out of varsity, now you're starting real life.
Yeah, so fresh out, so did the sports science degree. Fresh out of varsity, I work for Adidas while I was in varsity, actually. So my mom moved to Congo at some point. She moved to the DRC. And so she left me her car. And obviously, I had a driver's license by that point and got a job because I had a car from Adidas. A natural fit because the opportunity comes through our faculty and they're looking for reps. You know, they're looking for guys who would be trained on Adidas products, footwear in particular, because obviously we were in the anatomy, kinesiology kind of space. New technology coming out into the running sneaker wear, and they're looking for people to go around and train train retail stuff. So it would be sports scene, total sports, and then there would also be there was also a component of races because obviously runners are the 5 a.m. people. That job was fun for the free merch, but short-lived because I was like, I cannot do the 5 a.m.s. But yeah, so I would come into a mall like this in Rosebank and train staff at Total Sports. So I had a schedule that worked around. I was in my last year as well, so it worked around my school schedule. Had a schedule, come into Total Sports, sports scenes, the Adidas flagship stores, train the staff. I'd get paid a good amount of money. And then fresh out of that, I moved into Virgin Active. Got an opportunity then to be a lifestyle consultant, which essentially just meant I'm the girl who helps clean up the equipment on the floor, helps teach you the right technique when you are on a lunch machine or whatever it may be. And that was fun too, but I think I quickly realized that I have a very clear resolution or resolve. So I'm very clear on what I won't do. But I'll try. But once I'm in it and I know that I don't like it, I'm very clear on making that decision that this is not for me. So Virgin Active as well was short-lived. I think the gym is also particularly difficult because it's either you're working the very early shift or you're finishing off very late at night. And I remember my biggest frustration just being the taxis, finishing gym. I think they close at 8 maybe.
Yeah,
now
so
missioning.
it's like 9, yeah.
Yeah, now missioning to try get to North to try get I was just like, I can't. So I remember physically being in tears to say this can't be for me. And and then at the time I think I made the decision to leave. And that's how I ended up in magazines.
I don't see it for you.
Yeah.
The Virgin. and I say this because I was in the gym yesterday. And this time I wasn't working out. I just did the scan myself in and had a smoothie.
Oh, yeah, because...
My daughter decided all of a sudden she wanted to go.
Okay.
And I'd gone the day before, in my defense.
Oh, you were not the scan in, scan out.
No. So
person.
Because I was writing an article and I was on deadline. And then she just comes and goes, "Oh, can you take me to the gym at 7
a.m.?
No, in the evening.
PM. Okay. And that's a good time.
I'm like, dude, I'm not, I'm still dressed how I was dressed for the day, and now to change and then go to the gym and then I come back and I have to shower and finish my articles. I'll just take you." So I literally just went. I'm friends with the ladies there. So I scanned myself in and got myself a smoothie and did some work. Yeah. But I can't imagine also there's the clearing up the equipment, but there's the showing proper technique And I can imagine that, because I know the range of people that come to a gym. I don't know how kindly most will take to being instructed on proper technique for weight training.
And not by this 21-year-old at the time. But I mean, yeah. And also I found the setting very unsafe, because gyms have a very unsafe culture for women. And it was part just that, as well as just the safety aspect of now being in taxis at 9, trying to get somewhere. Of course, I had my male colleagues who would, but I was just like, how sustainable is this going to be? And for what one is getting paid, I think it wasn't sustainable. Yeah, but I've always been ambitious, and so that led me. I didn't study marketing, by the way, at least not at undergrad, because I was doing the sports science. But even at Wits, I was involved with the music department, or rather the radio station, Voice of Wits. And I was the head of music, so I was dealing with record labels. I was syndicating music to be played on air. I was sampling new releases onto the different shows, working with the producers. So I enjoyed that. I found that to be a lot of fun, and the magazines, Media 24, coming along felt like that. It felt like me. It was easy for me to do. Yeah.
It's one of those, with hindsight, you can see some magazine falls, like you can connect the dots much easier.
Correct.
In terms of where you are today. But, having come up in retail, liking nice things, I'm also a liker of nice things.
Yes.
Liking nice things to, ending up in magazines. It kind of makes sense. Although, if we look hard enough, not even hard enough, like just, the sports science, the psychology, etc. Those I'm sure, if we took our time, we can find the tools that it gave you to navigate the later spaces.
Absolutely, because also even in the sports science, you're working with people, you're studying with people who are first team rugby players or cricket players in their schools. And I mean, if I take it back, I also was the girl. I was always willing to try. I mean, in high school, they introduced cricket for girls, and there I was. No idea, but I was like, I've seen this thing played. I can do it. And so to move from the white pants in cricket to the short skirts in netball, I was both those people seamlessly. It didn't feel like, and I guess my background of how I grew up and moving around, it didn't feel like I was code switching. It just felt like I was able to be myself pervasively in all these different settings. And I think fundamentally one of the things I've surfaced as I've gotten older is that I'm not intimidated by being different. And so whether I was in tracksuits at my sports science department, then having to move to be the marketing girly on main campus. I even did promotions. The one time I think it was a chewing gum brand, and now I was an orange. But I could be all those people, because another thing that I enjoyed, I spent a lot of time at the Wits School of Arts, because I love theater. I come from a family of creatives, musicians, thespians. It's all of me. I think it's and this is what I try and teach my kids around, not to be limited or self-limiting in terms of who you are. You can be all these things. You can be the guy who was born in Melrose but able to go to Soweto and be with your cousins, but able to go to London and watch a sports game and be the same kid. What is important is that you don't play up to the setting and you change in the people that you're becoming. Yeah, I think it's been beautiful because even in business, I've sat in boardrooms where I was just like, how is this girl from Guamashu in a boardroom with these people? But I guess you have to make a decision in that moment if you're going to play small or you're going to qualify yourself and know that you fit in the room. And I've grown from that. I also think people have seen the authenticity in that, to say one is not performing for the room, one is sincerely in the room to learn, because when you don't know, you don't know. I got into business also fresh out of Media 24, so did my postgraduate at Wits Business School, finished at maybe 23, 24, and went straight into business. But I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that I was entrepreneurial. I leaned on a natural ability for it. I did events, which was what I did at the magazines, in marketing at Media 24, and I was just really good at it. And that ushered me into the next thing and the next thing. But I find that you're met with when you're sincere in your endeavor, whether you know or don't know, you are met with people that are willing to teach you, that are willing to guide you, because I may not have known the financial principles of business, but I then was met with people that I knew I could pick up the phone and ask. And to date, I also have endeavored to be that for my peers in business, because there's always somebody who's starting. There's also somebody that's further than me in their journey of business. There's somebody who's retiring that can teach you lessons of how they liquidated a business, or how they went through a major legal period, or how they. So there's, it's just being open enough. And I also have just the fortune of those relationships transcending age and color, because at that point we are human, and it's being able to connect.
And being able to find those people who operate on that same wavelength, or that with that same spirit.
Correct.
Uh,
Interesting story on
yeah.
that. Sorry, not to cut you.
Yeah.
Just to show you how God will then avail or give the provision to that, because just last week I had a meeting with a gentleman, very prominent businessman, Jewish. We're speaking, and through our conversations at the end of the meeting, we discover that where I live now is across the road from where he grew up. But if you look at the history of our country, we never would have met, and I never would have lived in that house. So he's like, the lady who lived in that house used to babysit me. You must understand how there's this at the corner. But the interesting part is that two completely different worlds, and we meet at common place in a business meeting and draw connection to a moment where he's saying, you must understand how I grew up in that neighborhood or just across the road from you. But we would have otherwise back then would have never had that connection. But that's the beauty.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty, and that's the sadness to it, is that it's taken us this long to start to have those kinds of experiences. And I say that because, not having grown up here, those experiences are let's say, a bit more natural. Like it's like, oh, that's cool. But it's not because you wouldn't have been allowed in that space, literally, when he was growing up. If you're alive, the chance of crossing paths was absolutely nil. But it's also kind of, the beauty of it is that more and more we have those experiences, particularly in this country. And I think more and more we'll have those experiences sitting here, but having those experiences with people around the world.
Yeah.
Like where you'll find a connection to someone sitting on, halfway across the world, and it's like, oh, you know the same person, or you've been to the same space, and it's understanding that we each have a valid place in the world.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter who we are, where we are, what our background is. We are valid. Like, we have a valid space.
And it hasn't been perfect, right? Because if you think about it, then realistically, in that particular example, how hard one has had to work. Because for us to even be sitting in a meeting and having a conversation, it means there's a meeting of minds and there's somebody who wants a service and the other person that can offer the service. So we're peers in that moment. So I think validity is to be given to how much Black people have also had to pull uphill to get to that point of just, and also how many people like us will get there or can get there. And I think this for me has been the privilege of education, because I then am not treated by my gender or my race. I am treated as a professional and a subject matter expert in a thing. And to earn that respect is what I also think, for me, education, even for my kids, I'll advocate for, because I still tell them, you are still Black boys in the world, and you will be Black boys wherever you go in the world. But for you to have an equal experience at this life, let's cut through some of the things that we have fought for, that you no longer have to solve for, to just put you at a table to have an equal dialogue with somebody, or an equal interaction, or an equal friendship. It's just just to have a friendship with another kid, just because maybe you connected on basketball or PlayStation or whatever. I think we all deserve that opportunity. And I guess even with my work in African luxury, it's about, and the focus has moved more from a consumer lens towards a business lens. One, because I'm in business, but two, because I realize the gap that is still there for African luxury brands and businesses to be able to stand as peers to the global players. I think the craftsmanship, the notoriety, the quality that goes into a Tebe Makuku piece it can't be disqualified when put against another global brand. It is absolutely up there. And so my work from a luxury consulting point of view is then to provide strategies for luxury brand businesses to be able to raise their standard, not because the quality or the product is bad, but in terms of how we do businesses, because I've learned the Western models.
The question that you ask on your podcast: what is luxury? What is luxury to you?
I am being interviewed here. Luxury for me is ease. It's the ability to choose at any given point. I think I have always, I referenced that point about my frustration being at the Virgin Active as an employee and choosing that this wasn't for me. And I have seen the luxury of my choices lead me to the next good place. And I've always wanted to empower myself to have the freedom to choose whatever. When I peeped an interview with Mbeo, I know Mbeo quite well, actually. She worked with my husband at BAT, Love Mbeo. And on that topic where she was speaking about overworking herself and overcommitting herself to a project. So for a while, I've had to be that. I've had to do that myself, because I've been survivalist. I've been surviving. I've been building a business that I needed to survive. I've been building myself out of poverty. But I now have the ease of choice as to how I work. and when I work. I love to work. That's my vice. But I've also seen how hard work has yielded its fruits for me. I always say to my kids that we're not a wealthy family, we're a hardworking family. And what we've built with hard work is we will maintain with hard work. So because with kids, you've got to sensitize them to say the abundance has not come because we had a trust fund. And just 2-3 weeks ago, it was my mom's birthday, and I took them to, my mom lives in rural KZN. But I'm talking rural, there was no water when we were there. It was like the very hot week where there was 38 degrees in KZN. And, to be able to move from your shower to a vascom or to washing a dish to, yes, I could choose to then go and book at Zimbali to have a proper shower for the day. But I also was okay with knowing that I can we call, my kids and I call it the gogo shower because, it's literally, and that's just the beauty of being Black, because all these experiences are the collection of who you are. It's a beautiful artwork of what makes us us. And I said to them, yes, we're here. We're in Gogo's world. Tomorrow we'll go to Zimbali. You'll swim. You will have a good shower. The following day, you'll be back home in your luxuries, But that's the luxury of choice, because I also want to balance my kids out, to not create a facade of glossiness.
I mean, it's funny, like my children learned how to wash with a bucket because of water issues in Joburg.
You didn't have to leave.
And this is, I mean, we're going through everything again now, but this is some years back, and my area, we would be without water for at least a week, kind of every month. And, like there's electricity, you've got water bottles, you boil water.
Sometimes you've got water, sometimes you've got electricity. Never both at the same time.
But, and I always say, I remember growing up in Maseru, and I think the 1 year, there was just no water in the taps.
For a year?
Yeah, so they literally, my memory says a year. I don't know if it was that long. And I was about 15. I think I was 14, 15, and we had communal taps. So we'd get these big drums
to go
and drive and collect water and then come and, everybody in the house, like you wake up in the morning and
you boil the water.
And, everybody's using the bucket or putting a little water at the bottom of the bath for my younger siblings who are smaller.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like the bucket, and you eventually affire a technique, like you have a way of doing it, so that everything is
mopping
covered.
Water goes into flashing water.
Yeah.
You recycle the water.
Yeah. My experience was in Joburg.
Yeah. So I think it's important. Life at its best should be lived in its dynamism. And yeah, it would be unreal. I could have pulled them out the same day. I could have said, what? You should have told us there's no water. We're going to book. But the truth is, I love being home. I love being able to wear my shorts and have no signal and eat amadumbe, because it's a different kind of a retreat for me. And people who see me in Joburg may think, oh my God, you bath in a bucket. But the reality is we all go back to a village or a township somewhere. And I'm very quick to correct the perception that I still don't have a connection or I don't come from that. Those who know me will know that I come from Guamashu and I'm proud of it. But because I think it's beautiful to show the picture of progression, that because then you take away what Guamashu is able to offer or other places like it as valuable life lessons. Because none of us were born in Sandton or Joburg or Mauros. Well, a few were in Soweto and whatever. But I just think there's something so beautiful about progression. and being able to show that, because today the picture looks like you just popped up drinking champagne, driving what you're driving, living where you're living, but it's not true. And now people will pay to go on retreat in the rural place. You'll see, it's interesting because we've always seen white people coming through to fish because there's prawn fishing and whatever in my mother's village. But it would be white people. And the prawns are right there, but you'll drive to Palito to go and buy the prawns at whatever restaurant. Yeah. So yeah, I think life at its best is just, to answer your question, for me, it's the luxury of choice. It's to be able to choose to bath in a Vascom and still be able to know that the following day I can choose something, or to have the luxury of being able to choose something else. It's by no means, this is my personal answer, not the academic answer. But there is obviously the academic answer in terms of a lot of the research that I've gone into as to what luxury is.
I also think it's being comfortable with embracing all of who we are. So, you now have a choice, for example, whether you can book and go to a place with water, or go to your mother's house. And it's not good or bad. It just is. Like, there is a you that is rooted in that experience. It's not separate. It's not a separate experience from the life that you live in Joburg. All of those things make up who you are.
Correct.
And it's neither right or wrong. I mean, when I first moved to Joburg, and actually after I got married, it was important for my wife to spend time in Masir, because I'm like, for you to understand me, you need to also see me in that context.
Yeah, not the editor.
When you see me, and this was long before long before I was important and I had fancy jobs. Like, I was just the guy, I was being a poet and trying to make things happen. But, when I was in Maseru, how I lived in the spaces I went to were not very different, but they were different from Joburg. Because in Joburg, we used to party in Rosebank. You'll be in Sandton, you'll be, in different places.
Okay, Divine Lounge.
So I'm from the generation that was even before Divine Lounge.
Okay.
Like, I remember Divine Lounge. This is when I was now slowing down.
Okay. And this is where
there's a place called Picasso's. There's a place called Picasso's, and then Enigma was a nightclub. But for me, and I remember going with her to Maseru, and there's an area in Maseru called Locationing, and my grandmother, so my younger brother and sister, their mother's mother, who I grew up with as my grandmother, she lived Locationing, and my cousin had a little bottle store there, and then there was a bottle store across the road. But one of my closest friends opened up a butchery.
It's perfect combo.
And he specialized in pork. So you'd have, the guys buying them. So you get you pitch up, you select your chops. The guys bride for you, and then you have your papa and moroho and your chop.
And your beer.
And yeah.
Or cider.
Or beer or cider. And this is the side of the road. So literally, I took her and we went, because I need to catch up with my friend. And then you sit on a wooden bench, and it's right next to the road. And I sent a young boy to, my cousin's younger than I am, so I was like, I sent one of the boys to go to my cousin, tell him to give me a 6-pack. And then when he saw it was me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Then it comes over. And then I'm sitting there. And then cars are stopping. It's like a Saturday. So cars are stopping. Oh, Kojo, you're around. What's happening? Then,
Good times.
And I'm like, that's also me. Me in Joburg, yes. In Sandton and living that life, that's me. But this is another part of me. And that's why I say I'm learning to have no judgment over it. It's just another dimension.
Yeah.
From a intellectual perspective or social perspective, we may go, that experience is a worse experience. But those experiences are the things that define us, that help us carve who we are in this world.
You're spot on, because isn't it crazy how, fine, we're older now, so we're attending weddings and funerals, right? But there is a part of, let's call it a wedding, maybe not something as morbid as a funeral. There is a part of excitement around if one of your peers is getting married back in the hood or in the village or in Maseru, to know that, oh my God, I can't wait to see everyone. And it's not about, I can't wait to see how much everyone has made it. You're just like, I can't wait to reconnect with everyone. Yes, people will be coming with their spouses now and their kids, but there's an excitement around just being able to meet back at that place that's so virgin.
And also just falling into certain rhythms.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a bit more tragic. It was a funeral, and I was actually home. I was home for a couple of days. I mean, I don't go to Maseru as much as I used to. So I was in Maseru for a couple of days. I had some stuff to sort out. And one of my closest friends, his daughter passed away. So before I was driving back, I was supposed to drive back in the morning, and then I decided, okay, I'll drive back in the afternoon, and I went to the funeral in the morning. And just kind of catching up with, so it's like the guys, like now, and some of these guys I hadn't seen in over 10, 15 years, because also when I used to go home, I used to go to my father. So people didn't think I was in Maseru at all, because I no more hung out. Like, I was no more on the streets. I'd literally just go see my father, catch up with one or two friends, and come back. And I mean, some of the guys are doing all right. Some of the guys are not. But, after, coming from the gravesite, and then all kind of hanging out to this place, and it was just like people falling into a certain rhythm. Like the clowns are the clowns, and we're all just standing there laughing as the clowns go at it.
Yeah.
And, the person that you always connected with, like you didn't hang out all the time, but you always had a kind of connection.
You still have the affinity.
You still have that affinity. And I found myself, because he was without a car, I was like, no, drive with me. And now we're having conversations. There's that bond.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about kids, and, where the kids going to school, and relationship, and, oh, you still married? How's the wife? How's the family? When before it was like partying and drinking and girls and stuff. But there's like a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
That's also comforting.
Yeah. I mean, I miss it. I referenced that with my cousins and I on my paternal side, and we don't see each other all the time. And sadly, these days we mainly see each other when it's a funeral. There has been one wedding, but it's just it's just so beautiful. It doesn't matter who is doing what professionally, relationally. We literally we eat lots of meat. We laugh a lot. Some people drink a lot. But it's literally just, there's something to be said about being able to be without the titles and the responsibility of dad, mom, wife, husband. I find that I'm able to, in those spaces, just be a child again, which I miss. And I guess it's also important for me how I've then wanted to create a childhood. I wanted to preserve my kids' childhood for as long as I could, because once you unmask that, you unmask that. My son only just got his cell phone, but because he was going to high school and we needed to communicate with him. And in high school, the teachers communicate directly with the kids. But I kept that. I held on to that, him not having a phone for as long as I could, because then it opens them up to another world. But yeah, I mean,
when you say that, I can imagine, because also, so the world and the spaces that you work in fighting for or carving out a space for Africans or African luxury, but Africans to be seen to provide luxury as opposed to craft or prettiness, etc. I can imagine how you also have to be very deliberate about how you show up, because we all know the perceptions and the prejudices and the stereotypes that are used to reinforce the idea that what we create and what we provide is not luxury.
It's inferior.
So I can imagine the freedom of being with your people and finally kind of being able to let go a little bit. And I get you said that you're a serious person.
I take what I do seriously, but I'm not a serious person.
Well, I am a serious person.
Okay.
And so why that resonated with me is because like that moment for me at the funeral reminded me how a lot of times I need to become better at letting go. Letting go a little bit and being a bit more playful. I haven't got it yet.
To play more.
But just kind of realizing that in that moment, in those type of moments, you're so fully present that you're not worried about what how you come across, or you're not worried about kind of letting loose to a certain extent.
I mean, the truth is, in our Black families, success earns power in the sense that there is a different respect that is attributed to somebody who becomes successful. So you could be the youngest family member, but if you seem successful, now we're keen to hear what you have to say. And I've had that, I guess, the fortune of that position, but I've also realized the burnout that comes with it, because it forced me to grow up and skip stages that I would have benefited from having. I find myself more and more now reminding my family that, hey guys, I'm one of the youngest members of this family, but also I have the benefit of a marriage that allows me to really just be at ease, one, but two, to play. My husband is a very serious but chilled guy. I think very independent as well, very autonomous as well, works hard, but also plays just as hard. And that has, I guess I've had to learn. So I think I've come from where you are in learning to play or be less serious, because I guess working hard has earned me the right to do so. I've had to give myself the permission to play more, because we could just be serious all the time, and that's tiring. I'm serious at work. I'm a boss. People look to me for direction, for answers. Because the work that I do now, it also comes with a perception that, oh, you're a thought leader in something, so there's an expectation of you giving us some information that we don't have. But half the time, I'm also just, maybe it's because I'm reading a lot or whatever, but I'm not the expert in the thing. And as a mom, I think my kids at 10 and 4 and 13 are fun to be. I'm not parenting as hard because they're fun to be with. We can hang, we can do restaurants, we can do movies, I can go into their world and watch basketball, and they teach me about that. And that has also given me an opportunity to reparent myself in being a child again and being fun again. Because just when we went to Zimbabwe, actually, I had just done my braids, and ordinarily I would be like, if I swim, they're gone. But I was just like, you know what, let's jump into the pool and let's goof around. And that was fun. And I saw, and you, every time that happens, and I'm sure you've seen, you realize how important it is for them to see you. You know, when they were younger, they were just like, okay, they don't even know, obviously, the jobs that we do. They don't know that the titles that we have are important, which I like. And I think as they get older, I'm also learning, I'm also mapping myself as a 10-year-old again, as a 13-year-old again, and maybe having a different privilege of being able to have experiences. Because now at this point, they're dictating where we go on holiday, because there's this water park that they saw that they want to experience. We maybe would have never known about that area or never gone to that place. So it's a lot of fun. I guess maybe we've got the responsibility as Black people to know that it's not just about now being able to afford the alcohol and sit and drink and have elaborate dining tables, but let's play more. I mean, I learned to swim as an adult.
I still have to learn.
You see, because people say, but you're from Durban. And I'm like, we're just out there jumping waves. We're not just doing strides. But because it was important for me to learn how to swim so that I could do activities with the kids when we were out. But I really just, at this point in my life, have the pleasure of the ease that I talk about and the playfulness. But that has come probably in the last 5-6 years, and making a concerted decision to just tell yourself you're safe now. To tell myself that you are, because to work is also cancerous, because you can just keep working to think you're still running away from the poverty or working yourself. But to decide, I mean, I don't think we've reached the point that we want to reach, maybe from a financial standpoint of multi-generational or legacy money, but we've at least worked ourselves out of poverty enough to take a breath. I mean, I read your t-shirt as we were starting the interview to say, literally just to stop more. Mm-hmm. Just to stop more and to unburden the seriousness and to find the Kojo to reparent that boy that needed to play more, that needs to play more. And what is the playing? My husband learned a saxophone as an adult. My son is a better saxophone player than him, sure, because he's got a school that can teach him that. But I think there's something powerful about being able to seek out those things that give us the permission to not just be titles.
And the beginner's mindset actually has an impact from a neuroplasticity perspective. So even if one is, I'm a big fan of hobbies. I have a list of a lot.
That you pursue.
I have a list of the ones that I pursue or I'm pursuing and the ones that I still want to pursue.
Of course.
Because we've reached a point where everything must be monetized. And I grew up in the era where you even had your hobbies on your CV. Like when you wrote a CV, yes, there was hobbies, yes, you know, reading, watching TV. It was kind of standard for
traveling.
But it's also recognizing that it's about experiences more than like when you're talking about money. So, for example, for me, money is a tool; it's a vehicle. There's a certain lifestyle I want to live, and certain experiences I want to give my family. That's why I work for money. You know, I don't work for money to accumulate it. No, I work so that I can give my family these experiences, and it's those experiences that enrich their lives and enrich my life. You know, and that's, you know, for me, that's always been kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of just there's a book, I can't remember the name of it now. I think it's written by a guy called Tom Vanderbilt. But it's about beginners. It's about the beginner's mind and how if you're constantly, if you have something that keeps you in a beginner's mindset, and that does wonders for just navigating life and the way you process. And it actually applies to, it enriches your life across the board. So
I love that.
I can get that. I get that, learning how to swim, doing a saxophone, and not doing it because you're like, oh, I want to then play in a band. No, it's just.
Yeah, you don't have to, as you're saying, monetize the thing.
Yeah, it's something.
For the pleasure of
it's something. It's something to do for the pleasure of learning about it. And at some stage, if you drop it, you drop it. And it's like, okay, what's the next thing? Correct.
And to not have to learn them for social capital.
Yeah.
To be able to play the piano at dinner. No. I mean, we'll all go, do, re, mi. You know what I mean? But I think on the you spoke about African luxury and being able to show the importance of our work, not just being crafty or inferior. I mean, I will always, on any platform, categorically state that Africa has always been luxurious. We are not an emerging market for luxury. We are the foundation of luxury. It is through colonization and it is through other sort of social, paradigms that have shifted the perception of where luxury was founded. You see the big moves that are happening now where there's just Cairo has just opened that huge museum. There's a huge drive for repatriation of bringing back heirlooms that were carried off from different tribes, which are really sources of wealth. That move is not happening because of anything other than a reclamation. And to reclaim something means you must have had it to begin with, which means the jewels, it all belonged to us. Topic of sustainability right now, we've always been sustainable. We've always been in harmony with nature. We've always understood the role of ecology, of animals, plants, and humans. And so for me, I think the work that I have chosen to do is really around that. I may never tell you which luxury brand to buy because I'm sure people can search and discover that for themselves. But I am also very deliberate about investing my money more in African luxury brands. I wear Maxhosa, I wear Tebe Makuku, I wear Lukhanyo Mdingi, I wear Rich Mnisi. I just, if I'm going to spend as much on the West, it means I'm endorsing it. Yes, there are certain things like up until there's African branded cars, probably we still rely on German technology or whatever. But I think it is so important as well because as our kids are being, I suppose I know I'm a reference point now for my kids at least, to say as they are growing, it's important for them to be conscious. They may make the decision to only wear Italian or French luxury, fine. And I don't though want our traditional clothes to be reserved for traditional occasions. I think it was, I just saw last week on OK Africa, one of the West African countries have now declared a day where you must wear your traditional dress. I wish it moves beyond just being a day. I wish it moves to just being standard practice, where you don't have to pull out that seshweshwe because it's a traditional wedding, but you pull out that, and certain people are doing it better than others.
I think so. Ghana announced it.
I think it's
where
Ghana.
it's a particular shirt from a particular ethnic group. what I found the difference between South Africa and a lot of countries, particularly West Africa, because my roots are in Ghana, and when you're there and you're on the streets, people
are adorned.
You wear your clothing because it's the clothing that you have, and you like it, not because this is now a traditional. It's a kente shirt, so I'm being Ghanaian. Whereas from a South African context, it felt a lot more deliberate.
Yeah.
So that announcement, because I think I saw the announcement in Ghana, and it's actually a particular shirt, which I also found that interesting for them to go. Because I went, okay, why that particular shirt? Because Ghanaians have always just worn their clothing. I remember being a child and being put in, hanging sleeves, like daishiki shirts, and hating them as a kid. Because I'm 10 years old and I want to be cool. Now I'm out of the house and my sleeve is hanging down to my waist. And even, so I remember after the World Cup. And
2010?
Yeah. So after 2010 World Cup.
Because that's the only, when we say World Cup, let's be clear, we're only referring to 2010.
Because I was having a conversation with a friend and I was wearing a Ghana football jersey. And this friend of mine goes, "Are you playing this? Are you playing this? Are you playing today?" I'm like, "Who's playing?" Like, you're wearing the Ghana football jersey. Is Ghana playing? I'm like, "No, I went into my wardrobe and today I felt like wearing this thing. It's another T-shirt for me." After the, wave the flag Fridays and stuff. So I always found, especially when I started going to Ghana a lot with my father before he passed, that was the fundamental difference. It's like, here it's still, we have to deliberately and consciously go, let's celebrate this by doing that. Whereas there, it's a lot more interwoven into kind of how you dress on a regular.
Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing is, even if it's just a T-shirt and a day, the work has begun. And collectively it will, I suppose, culminate into something that becomes a lot more consistent and pervasive. But the work, what we're seeing, the champagne popping lifestyle is normal of any, what they call emerging market for luxury, or where people just suddenly break into that sophistication of being defined as luxury consumers. And as consumers become a lot more sophisticated and their tastes are refined, they start to go on less branded luxury brands. Like, that's why there's been the long debate of logo, no logo within the luxury world. They start to not be as conspicuous in their consumption and in their showiness. Because it's signaling. It's being able to signal the fact that I now drink Evian, which means I'm not just drinking water. I'm drinking an experience. And that's what luxury really is. It's about being able to, because it's such an intangible and elusive concept that people use signaling to show that they've moved from here to here or here to here. And for a market like ours, I mean, even with South Africa, I cite apartheid in the landscape that it's then painted for luxury, in that you've got everybody from the new money or nouveau riche to the old money, the money aristocrats, and everyone in between. And it's a continuum that people will move up in, which is acceptable as a journey. So it's just that we do a lot as Africans in being showy, which is also fundamentally different to who we are as people and as societies, because we're such collectivist societies. Like, I'm not going to show up to my mother's village in a helicopter. It's just distasteful. It's just, you're walking into a setting where people are still farming, eating from their land, solving for bread and butter that day, you're just not going to be so tone deaf that you're going to do something like that. But yet people do, and it's all part of the journey to how we're shaping our luxury society. As to whether it is correct or not is something different, because obviously we're seeing as well what's happening with just the excessive looting of public resources, which fund what looks like luxury lifestyles, but is actually fundamentally opposed to how luxury should be enjoyed, because I don't think it's meant to be enjoyed to the detriment of the next person. It really should be, luxury is the ability to then commune around abundance. As to whether you bought the bottle or I bought the bottle should not matter, but it's the ability for us to come around the table and to enjoy beautiful conversation at leisure, and not for me to trump how expensive or how many bottles you bought versus what I bought. So I hope it shifts. I mean, interestingly, the youth are driving a very different discourse for luxury. Like January, there was I think they called it Dry January or something. There was a whole move around not drinking. There's a huge move around them supporting brands that are not infringing on human rights. And I'm enjoying that, because it is shaping a different conversation or direction for luxury growth. And it's an African youth in particular, with their ingenuity, we're seeing the innovations that are coming out from a luxury product or service point of view. The most magnificent things are happening, and I mean, luxury is just a state of quality and a state of experiencing something. It's not to say that it's only because you must first afford in order to be. No, there are people who have, like art. Look at what's happening in the art world with the most minimal resources. People are being able to create or produce the most beautiful pieces that are wanted or sought after the world over, and that I guess I think is the education that I try and bring forward with my guests. I mean, with you, we spoke about masculinity and luxury, because we're seeing men being the ones that are showy and mureki, and but what is your relationship with luxury? I think I asked you that question, for example, to say, as a man, as a leader in society, or there are people who are looking up to you, or there are people that map themselves in your footsteps. What is that for you? And we had a very interesting conversation that people must catch on Africa and luxury. And I'll share it with you for your audiences to also have a look. I think we had which would be beautiful for them to experience, because we went into different dimensions of what this looks like for you, given this very glossy world that you worked in, but yet being such a simple guy, in just the cultural grounded sense.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.